Welcome to another day in the Matrix. This is Red Pill Podcast 252, and I hope you're all having an amazing weekend so far. And we have an important week ahead, and it is not because of Trump or ICE or the government shutdown or the FOMC meeting, which, of course, many, if not most, investors and analysts will be focusing on, since apparently getting spellcasted by Jerome Powell has become sort of like a weird fetish for investors over the past 5 years. So expect more of the same behavior this week when it comes to how everyone will be focusing on the exoteric narratives and the Federal Reserve and this FOMC on Wednesday. But of course, none of you are here because of the exoteric stuff, as you get that everywhere else. Here, we show you the esoteric take on the markets, and I have a really powerful podcast for you all today. So as you can imagine, we have a lot to cover here in today's Red Pill Podcast 252. So let's get into it. But before we get started, as always, make sure to get relaxed, get comfortable, grab yourself a fresh cup of coffee or tea if it's a little earlier in the day, or maybe a beer or a glass of wine or any beverage of your choice if it's getting a little later out there in the Matrix. And if you're interested in a specific altcoin and you'd like me to review the chart, then go ahead and read the description below this video here in Patreon, and it'll explain how you can vote on the altcoins that I'd be covering in next week's Red Pill Podcast. So in last week's podcast, we focused heavily on my eclipse cycle theory with this chart that we're looking at right here. And the reason for this is because we're steadily approaching eclipse season, which will be next month. And we did this to determine when the macro bottom will be in for Bitcoin, which of course impacts the majority of the crypto market. So essentially being able to identify when Bitcoin bottoms out naturally helps us determine when to expect this entire sector to bottom overall, for the most part. Also in last week's Red Pill, we focused on the bottoming structure that we can expect and how long that bottoming structure will take to complete. And now that we've officially moved into that crucial time frame that we've identified as of this week, we can clearly see its effects on the crypto market. Bitcoin right now is at $86,000, similarly to where we closed off in this week over here when we were in the process of crashing into late November. And actually, that has a similar relationship post new moon. So we'll get to that a little bit later, but Bitcoin is showing weakness along with the majority of the crypto market as we push through the first new moon of this year. And interestingly enough, something I mentioned at least 4 to 5 weeks ago was the quote unquote inverse effect we've been having for Bitcoin with 2025 compared to the year prior in 2024. And that's why January 20th and throughout this week that we're concluding right now, this whole week we're in, here in 2026, it was on my radar for the past 2 months, since that was the most euphoric day in crypto in the entire cycle, which I still believe we're in the cycle, at least until Bitcoin breaks structure, which it would take a lot actually at this point, considering when we zoom out, I mean, Bitcoin's been in a bull run for quite some time now, and how negative the sentiment has gotten recently is definitely something worth paying attention to. And I'm not saying this to be like a, what do they call them, a perma bull or whatever. You guys know here, we are not bulls or bears. Be a wolf, follow the moon. And this is the purpose of putting so much emphasis on the eclipses and the month-to-month lunar cycles. But getting back to this, I've had this week from January 20th throughout the end of January effectively on my radar for the past couple months because of the inverse effect that we've been having lately. So it's been incredibly bullish and everybody was focused on crypto back then. And now it's getting boring and no one cares about crypto all of a sudden. We're going to talk a lot about this today because I feel like sentiment is everything right now. I feel like that's always been the case, but now we have the internet, and with the internet, there's so much content, right? And I truly hope that I do my part by not oversharing just for the sake of content being out there in the airwaves. I really try to create art and not just flood everybody with content. I believe my releases on YouTube and everywhere else proves that, because sometimes I'm seeing people posting 3 videos a day. Sometimes I'm seeing people post 10 videos a week. And that's filling up the world with a lot of stuff, And that influences people. That really does. That it impacts the quote unquote consumer here. So we're in an attention economy. We're going to talk about this a lot in today's Red Pill, and it'll perhaps be a theme as we get closer and closer to eclipse season, because a total solar eclipse followed by a total lunar eclipse or full eclipses in a pair is a huge energy. Okay. So whether you are an astrologer or into astrology, or you're somebody who's a decoder, whether you know about this stuff or you don't know about it, it is a thing, and it impacts our emotions just like any other full moon would impact your emotions. Or you might have a super full moon give more heightened emotions. And I think that's why we're seeing all this energy pent up. And we've seen this before. Look at right there, the transition from this green box into the red box, and this major correction that was perfectly into the start of the lunar cycle on the total lunar eclipse back on March 14th of 2025. This is something we've known about a long time ago here at Waters Above, and it's not something that is weird. So people can point to tariffs and this, that, and the third, but it doesn't actually matter, because these energetics are in place far beyond these player characters being put into high positions in politics, government, or entertainment, or whatever. These things were bound to be. And ultimately, it's how us as a collective responds to it or reacts. And right now, I guess the whole point of what I'm saying right now is because we have a lot of reactions going on in the world. And the concept of becoming a sophisticated investor is almost getting more and more difficult because of the amount of content out there. It's tough to know what is truth, what do I give my attention to, and ultimately throughout that process, very rarely does anybody develop a skill. So my goal here at Waters Above is for you to develop skills, for you to become self-reliant, and that way it's not about what I do or what I say. It's more about what is it that you feel, and that's what will set you on a path that you can stay accountable along the way. And now that sends a ripple effect throughout other areas of your life, not just your investing journey. And remember, at the end of the day, embodying a conscious investor is way more than what you're doing with your money. It's what you do with your time and your attention, and what you do with your emotions. The elite know this, and that's why they weaponize those 3 things against us. So continuing this, we are now effectively completing, in my opinion, the inverse effect ritual of last year, where we had euphoria and now we have depression, sorrow, despair, whatever negative emotional word you want to insert. I'm sure many of you remember January 20th, 2025 was Donald Trump's inauguration, and within 24 hours of that event, both him and his wife launched a meme coin. And in the moments leading up to him being sworn in, the Trump coin momentarily traded above $74. And then exactly 1 year later, to today, it's now trading at $4.70. A perfect 47 code ritual for the 47th president of the United States of America. All the while, the 47th element of the periodic table, silver, is continuing to break higher into price discovery, experiencing its most euphoric sentiment ever, exactly 1 year after crypto was euphoric. Are you hearing what I'm saying right now? It's pretty interesting, right? As above, so below. Also, just a side note, back in 1980, this is probably appropriate time to pull up the silver chart, which it just hit 106. Wow. I got that 107 target in. Mama me. All right. Just wanted to quickly come over here to show you that silver back in 1980 during this crazy euphoric rise, its absolute peak of the blow off top was in, I believe it was on the exact date. This might take me a second. I believe it was on the exact date of January 21st. Now that's really fascinating. I mean, I'm not, obviously we're past January 21st right now, but we do have that to consider. Will my moon phases work here? Whoa. Okay, on a new moon. That's pretty magical. Um, Anybody who knows the lunar cycle stuff, it's pretty mind blowing. It's been like 4 or 5 years now of me talking about it, so maybe it's like lost its mojo, but it is pretty damn cool. It's pretty damn cool when you see like all the major lows on full moons. Anyways, and I would love to lay eclipses over this and see. I think that'll be an opportunity for the upcoming year of the horse decoded, which please bear with me. It's probably the busiest time of my life right now. And I don't say that to get your sympathy or anything. Like, it's just true. It's a truth. This is the busiest time of my life right now with all the things that I'm building behind the scenes. But I would love to maybe deep dive into silver and gold back in the day. During its last time, it was on a parabolic advance entering Euphoria, because there's probably something to this. But anyways, just wanted to bring that up. The fact that the last time we had silver trading like this was back in 1980, and it was going up in a straight line perfectly into the beginning of the year. January 21st was the top. So if you read my last update here, you know that I have doubled down essentially on my 107 silver target. The reason for that is the atomic mass of silver is 107. Talked about this in my last YouTube video even. We had the 47 code. We had the double top of silver on the $47 rejection over here and over here. Let me turn off these moons. It looks crazy. Let me go like that. Put it on a 2-week chart, make it even easier for you to understand. So we have this clear ritual, $47 rejection, major, you could call it a cup and handle. I mean, people love patterns, so we'll just stick with that. And then rise up to the 107 target, 47, 107, clean. I mean, this shit could happen while we're on the podcast. Why not? Why not? And the fact that Bitcoin's back at 86K as this is happening to me is very symbolic as well, because we had the October 6th top, 8-6, like octagon, 8 sides. And then we crashed down to 80K, but then closed off that weekly candle at 86K. So here we are now from that weekly close, and we're looking at, that'd be wild if we are around this 86 target for until the end of the month for 68 days. Whatever. At this point, you guys have seen enough examples of the market following these number pattern, these number codes. That's why you're here. That's why I continue to do this, because I love this part of the market. The thing that really keeps me alive here is I love the decoding side of the market, and it's a bit like, well, I mean, I do get that the last year was very dramatic and it was very difficult to be profitable, but ultimately, like, in the grand scheme of things, this is not new. This system, we've been utilizing it for 5 years now. So there's been quite a jump in these prices for the top positions here. And part of that includes gold. Anybody was here with us in Q4 of 2023, you remember vividly. We're not even going to go there, but I do get that right now, if you're just local to these current prices, it feels like pain and despair. And I say this all the time with regards to XRP, and this has nothing to do with my investments, but just if you were here through all of this, which many of you were, I mean, I remember it vividly, or if not, if you were here through any of that, looking at a $2 on average XRP with some dips below into the 180 territory, it's like, wow. You would have never imagined that back here, that you would be spending over 400 days at these prices. And I get it, right now it feels very unstable, it feels very scary, and we're working in a market that is essentially going through a big transition. We're entering the Aquarian economy, and this is part of the transition. It's watching this final craze in the metals market, quote unquote, the physical world, And of course, there's utility, real world utility for silver and for gold in the Aquarian economy for sure, but not from an investment standpoint. So I think this is very symbolic of like the end of an era in a lot of ways. Just like when we were making it up to 1980, if you were to study what was going on from the 70s to the 80s pivot point to the 90s, you would understand the transition and the difference between those two decades side by side. I'm kind of looking at the 70s and the 90s, and then you just look at the 80s as that central point. Think about the transformation the world went through at that time. Well, we have another instance of that, 1990 and 2010. And then you use the year 2000 as the central point. We experienced what that was like. Then we have another pivot point, which is 2010, and then what we're in now from 20 up till 2030, let's just say. And then you have 2020 as that central pivot point. What happened in 2020? Right? We are now experiencing this kind of like final moments of the old economy. And congratulations to silver holders. You were in the right, and and of course gold holders. You were in the right place at the right time. But looking back at how silver went into this bear market here, I mean, you didn't have much time to get out. It's a brutal game of musical chairs. And if your ass doesn't find a seat, that's all I'll say. But again, please be happy right now. If you're in that position, be happy. It's awesome. Now let's continue. Regarding my last update, doubled down on the 107 silver target since that's silver's atomic mass. And we closed off this week at, what was it, $103 silver. I just want to quickly show you the monthly RSI here because this does matter, especially now that we're about to close a month. And this thing's at 94, man. We're going to cover silver today. 94. You see right over there? If I hover, 94.28. That's on the monthly. That's spicy. Okay, we're getting spicy here. We'll talk about silver actually in its own section a little bit later because this is important holistically for what the markets are doing. But for now, coming back to this crucial time frame we just moved into, and this time frame has everything to do with the upcoming eclipse season. You all know this now. And the specific date range is from this past Tuesday, which was January 20th, which we just covered, until March 24th, which is 3 weeks after the upcoming total lunar eclipse, which will be on March 3rd. And to dial this in even more, we have from the 4th week of the year, which we're completing now, until the 7th week of the year, which we're currently moving through until February 15th. Again, bringing in this powerful 47 code from the 4th to the 7th. And then we have the most important date of them all, which is the following days of February 16th. We get to that, as that will be the 47th day of the year. And then the following day will be the annular solar eclipse and Chinese New Year, the Chinese Lunar New Year, with the final days of the Year of the Snake, and the final day of the Year of the Snake being February 16th, the 47th day of the year. And again, we have that 47 code. Then February 17th, we have the start of the year of the fire horse on Chinese New Year, making the next key date. Following that, March 3rd, the total lunar eclipse that I've been focusing on for months now. And it's a key element to my eclipse cycle theory that we covered thoroughly in last week's Red Pill. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. So now that we've covered the key dates leading into eclipse season and beyond eclipse season, because I give you March 24th as well, pretty much that time frame of understanding Bitcoin's relationship with bottoming around eclipse season. Just like if you knew this back here, you could have taken advantage of that too, you know? Like this is all just knowledge for you to have and apply accordingly. And for those people that are like, well, you know, how can I use this in the future? Well, you just go to this eclipse website and it tells you all the eclipses until the end of eternity. And it's the biggest part of my thesis here, so I continue to share with you when we're in lunar, solar cycles, etc. And I've already revealed far in advance that after this upcoming total lunar eclipse on March 3rd, we don't have another total lunar eclipse all the way until New Year's Day in 2029. So the energy will be in, or at least will be transitioning into, is probably the better way to put it. So we, of course, have to shine a little bit of light on the exoteric events going on in the world stage, especially when it comes to finance, since we've covered the main esoteric information for you all. So let's quickly mention this upcoming January 28th, as that will be the next Federal Reserve FOMC meeting. And this date is it's actually tied to a key date that I shared with you all here in our Mastermind community at least a half a year ago. Perhaps some of you remember my decode for January 29th into January 30th. This was really big because of this connection right here. We have from the 29th into the 30th, 33 days before the March 3rd exoteric 3-3 date, the master number 33. This also happens to be the day leaving 303 days left in the year. When utilizing the rules of numerology, you remove the 0 and you have the master number 33 again. Then when we connect the 3-3 date to January 29th, not including the end date, they're exactly 33 days apart. So naturally, if you include the end date, that will be your transition date, January 30th. And there's a big reason for also practicing this little trick as well. It's because, well, like in Australia, for example, they're already a day ahead. So just look at time like a ripple effect. And the best way too is you have your central point date, you have the eve of the date, the day before, and you have the day after. That's the easiest way to understand everything, because that's how time effectively works. You have the present moment, you have before and after. So when you identify a key date, it's always best to take the day before and the day after as part of the whole cycle. And that's why everything is centered around the 369 code, by the way. Also why 3 is so powerful, or the Trinity. It's a part of every religion too. So let's keep going, but I hope you guys appreciate the little nuggets of decoding wisdom along the way. So this actually brings back a powerful 47 code one more time, and it's right here to Wednesday, the 28th, the day that Jerome Powell will be speaking at the FOMC. And I'll tell you why, because they're 5 weeks apart. And what 5 weeks is 4 weeks and 7 days. The hidden 47 code within this date range. And this is an important tool to utilize. You could do the same thing with months. You could do the same thing with anything. Like, you can find numbers within numbers. It's a big reason why I utilize Fibonacci or prime numbers. And there's a very, oh man, wasn't there like a crazy television series dedicated to prime numbers, and how like somebody figured out something utilizing prime numbers, and it had the ability to like crack the code of the universe? It was pretty crazy. I didn't know about it until someone in a community brought it up to us, and I was just like, whoa, holy moly, there's something clearly that Hollywood is trying to reveal to us here. So the primes are very, very powerful, and same kind of concept here. It's essentially, to simplify what I'm doing, it's finding hidden numbers within the numbers. So we could quickly practice this. We have number 35, that is 3 5s, 555. That becomes 15. We also have the numbers that become the primes. So for example, we have the number 47. Remember, we talk a lot about 47. And that becomes 15 because it's the 15th prime number. And you could continue to reduce, mix and match, as long as it's tied to one key thing. That's what matters most. When you start tying it to a bunch of different things, that's when I would not utilize, because it's no longer in reality. The same thing with gematria. If you're ever decoding and you have something showing up in the ordinal cipher or Chaldean, but then the other thing that you're matching it to has some reverse reduction or some way more intricate cipher like this Sumerian, just be careful there. But if you're seeing a match in Sumerian with 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 terms, then you know you're onto something. And I have my own decoding calculator coming soon, so stay tuned for that. But anyways, let's stick to what we're doing here. I just want to try to be educational as much as possible during these, so that you walk away with some skills. So we already discussed all these powerful 33 connections, but if that wasn't enough to prove how powerful next week will be by the code, we're talking about the week starting on the 26th of January. We've reviewed all those 33 connections, and that means we can't forget the following Sunday, which will be the day leaving. Sorry. I don't know where that went. Sunday, February 1st will be the day leaving 333 days left in the year. So we have another 33 connection again. And then we also have the following date, which is the 33rd day of the year. This is a lot of 33 connections effectively in like a 6-day time frame. We were starting on the FOMC going up to Monday, the 2nd of February. And none of these connections would be possible at any other time this year. All of them are tied to a single date on the calendar that we've been talking about, which also happens to be our one and only total lunar eclipse this year, which happens to land on March 3rd, the 3-3 date. Absolutely epic synchronicity. And of course, since I mentioned that 6-day time frame from January 28th until February 2nd, the 33rd day of the year, we have that span of days being 6 days, which is 3 plus 3, 2 threes, the master number 33. So it comes full circle. You have the 3 days before that are effectively starting on the FOMC meeting, up to the 3 days after, which lands you in the 33rd day of the year. So this is a very, very powerful week by the code, okay? And that is why they're setting up all these rituals and all the mess that they're doing right now. This is the reason why. But those who are more dialed into the mainstream will, of course, be focusing on the Fed and this upcoming FOMC on Monday. And I'm literally hearing people blame what's happening with ICE for why crypto was crashing. I mean, what? Okay, so, I mean, I get it. I get the theory here, but I do have something, though, that I want to share. It's a working theory, but I do want to talk about it in the year of the horse decoded that does have to do with ICE because we're moving into the year of the fire horse. So we have ICE. By the way, 33 degrees, the concept here is going from 32 to 33 is ice melting. So, this fucking eclipse, man, sorry to curse, but this is everything, man. This is everything. This makes so much sense to me why they're doing what they're doing with precious metals leading up to this eclipse. It's powerful stuff. So, just to quickly share my thoughts on the exoteric stuff regarding the FOMC and all of that. As my latest research, it seems most analysts are not expecting a rate cut. Essentially, the majority is expecting rates to stay the same, unchanged, but with the timing of the energetics here and all that could go down between now and Wednesday, I wouldn't be surprised if there actually is a rate cut. And that isn't like a prediction. That's not me saying first of all, I don't even fucking care, okay? The whole thing with the Fed is like unbelievable to me how much prana people give these frauds. Like the whole thing is a scam. And I don't get it. I like used to really like that side of crypto and people who cared about the truth about money. But like it's all about like Fed pump my bags or Trump pump my bags or BlackRock pump my bags. And like, I'm sorry to go on that tangent at this time, but maybe some of you resonate with me. I don't know, man, but I like when I was studying crypto, I was like, whoa, there's something really cool here in this community of people that look at it as like a road towards sovereignty and a road towards like being your own bank. But it's clearly not the case anymore because retail investors are begging Daddy Trump and Jerome Powell and all of these people, all of these talking heads. And that's savior technology, right? Like that has nothing to do with your freedom. That has, damn, it's like whatever, I mean, at the end of the day, my opinion doesn't matter here. I've grown quite a bit in my life when I left behind the savior technology, when I decided to become self-reliant, acquire skills, develop more insight, uh, accept uncomfortable truths, develop, like, refine my perception. That's what allowed me to grow. Um, but yeah, like I'm not sensing this anymore in crypto. It was there for a moment, and now I think it's far gone. Uh, People are now blaming institutions. It's like people were begging for the institutions to get involved. Now people are begging for regulations. What? What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? This is silly. So, I mean, in a world where we're now moving into mass, clearly just full scale adoption and also regulation, and the institutions are already sinking their talons deep into this thing, and it's now owned primarily by those people, and retail is scared shitless of this stuff and they're leaving in droves. It's just the setup for like anyone who's invested in crypto right now. You need to look at this as I've always taught. It must be secondary or tertiary, if not better be tertiary in your wealth plan. But if you make it the pinnacle of your wealth plan, you're already setting yourself up for failure. And that also goes for silver or gold. Honestly, anything, any primary investment like that. Like, and I know that might be controversial. It might make people go, what? But again, you have to play the waiting game in that point. You can't be putting your main focus into taking action, into sharing your gifts, your skills, your knowledge, your abilities, your passion, your story, etc. with the world, because you're just waiting. And I really hope that people tap into that in 2026. I really, 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 really hope, beyond our community, just as a species, I hope for that. As one thing I hope for, not for Trump or Jerome Powell to pump our bags. That's sick. And I think the world now is shifting too much to that, where it's all about, yeah. Anyways, let's move on. But just being vulnerable with you all on how I feel about this, because I do think this year is going to be a lot more similar to last year, where it's just this desire to have these technocrat transhumanists be in control of everything. And we're praying for them to be more in control so that they can, quote unquote, give us an alt season or whatever the hell. So, getting back, the market might actually respond positively to the FOMC's quote unquote decision, but leading up to that FOMC, it would make sense for us to remain a bit more on the bearish side for crypto. And one of the more unique outlooks that I've shared supporting this is actually in the XRP chart. Let me quickly show you. Maybe some of you know about this, but when we look at the XRP chart, and we just throw on the moons, I'm going to turn off everything else. We're going to see about where we are as day 7. And there's been a theme, especially since we've moved into this local high here, where we have about 9 to 10 days, and then we pivot. Here, 9 to 10 days. I mean, that's day 9 on the nose. Here we have the new moon. Here we have day 10. Here we have the new moon. Here we have day 9 to 10. Here we have the new moon. Here we have 9 to 10. Here we have, would you look at that? 9. You see, like, I mean, I could keep going if you want. I should maybe make a YouTube video about this, but I've talked about it here. I've had somebody bring it up like 4 months ago. Um, it's the same day 9 to day 10. And like, it's like XRP is consistently doing this. Look at this. So this might be the compass moving forward. We just had a daily close, so now we're on day 8, and day 9 to 10 is like a little bit of a pivot. So that would technically be Tuesday leading up to the FOMC. Let's just call it leading up to the FOMC. I think we're going to pivot soon, guys. And I know, like, I'm not saying that it will be an immediate green candles to Valhalla, but that pivot should be underway. I mean, especially because of the fact that, if you can see, most things have already completed a full correction back to their yearly open. So this was just all to liquidate shorts building up into the end of the year. And also, smart money was de-risking for tax purposes. But that's a side story. So my point that I'm getting to is that 9 day after the new moon thing is like undeniable. And it's a very powerful thing that could be super helpful for all of you guys, because you don't need to be smart. You don't need to know crazy, Elliott wave and like 100 different methodologies and have all these indicators. It's just a simple indicator. And you don't even need the indicator on your you don't need the indicator. Just go over here to the moon cycles and count 9 days after every new moon for the rest of the year, and that will give you some interesting data. It's not going to always work. It's not going to always work, but there's so many instances last year. I mean, maybe 80% of the time last year it worked. Most top altcoins tend to correct 9 to 10 days after a new moon, and this pattern is especially effective when we have a new moon dump, which we just had. You can see that's a theme. Correcting on new moons, not moving up immediately after them, unless there's a deep dump on them, and then yes, we pivot. But this is the thing that we're experiencing that's been sort of the play here for altcoins for a year and a half, 2 years now, maybe. And with the new moon that just happened on January 18th, that makes 9 to 10 days later literally perfectly landing on January 28th, the day that Jerome Powell speaks at the FOMC meeting. Obviously, that's not too far away. So with that being said, I'll of course entertain that tomorrow, Monday, will be the typical volatility where if we pump, then we dump. And if we dump, we'll recover. That's how they've been doing this Sunday through Tuesday thing for how many weeks now, guys? Look at last Sunday. It was the same shit. So it's how every Sunday and Monday has been for crypto for well over a year now. And with the week ahead being FOMC week, then we should expect the same level of volatility, but amplified. So for everyone actively trading this market, especially with leverage, please be careful this week, please. Now, before we continue, I just want to recap something that I shared in last week's Red Pill that I received a couple questions about over the week. And it has to do with my thoughts on a potential deeper correction for Bitcoin, followed by a continuation into a bear market, which the majority is anticipating. And now that we're getting this type of price action here over the weekend, many are entertaining it happening like immediately. So we really do need to clear up what I said. And with this being the final stage of the lunar cycle, there's of course room here in 2026 for this to come to fruition, like a 60K Bitcoin, for example. But it's the depth of the correction for Bitcoin that I'm being cautious about when it comes to these larger projections, such as the typical 70 to 80% drop from the top. So that's what a majority of people are expecting. So what I shared in last week's Red Pill that I'd like to provide clarity on is that moving forward, I personally see Bitcoin mimicking what Apple did in the post.com bubble recovery. Let me just quickly get to the Apple chart. I'm going to go to the weekly. I'm going to turn off everything. And we're going to zoom out back to the past. And we have here the dot-com bubble crash. Now, specifically, I'm talking about after it recovered from that wipeout year in 2000 leading into 2001 and eventually reclaimed its prior cycle peak in 2005, and then it started pushing deeper into price discovery later that year. And my truth is that the crypto crash that we had in 2022 Now 4 years ago. Isn't it crazy? Like in a month and a half, it will be 6 years since the C19 scam. Are you guys are you guys realizing how time is accelerating? It's unbelievable. But anyways, in all seriousness, my truth is that the crypto crash in 2022 was the crypto.com bubble and not the 2018 crash, not Bitcoin's 2015 crash that had a couple of altcoins around. It was the 2022 crash. That was the crypto.com bubble. But Bitcoin is more like Apple. And then you have a lot of these other random projects that are like all the other ones that fizzled away to zero in 2001 into 2002, if they even got to go that long as failures. Some of them just completely were liquid and wrapped up their whole scam by the year 2000. So, and we saw that happen with some projects, didn't we? In the year 2022, we saw the collapse of FTX. In a single event, it all came crashing down. We had the Terra Luna collapse. To me, that was the type of scale that they were dealing with back then. Not what happened in 2018, not what happened the cycle prior. My truth is that 2022 was the crypto.com bubble. I should maybe make a video just about this because I feel there's something to this. And when we look at the way Bitcoin has recovered in comparison to everything else, it is way more like this. It is way more like this. We have just been going up and up and up with some, of course, corrections along the way, but just keeps going up and up and up. And I get it right now. We might be somewhere here. We might be here. Literally. I'll address that maybe in the year of the horse decoded on the specifics, but moving forward, we could potentially see Bitcoin continue to stair step up over time, just like the Apple chart did in 2004, where it broke into a new all-time high, moving into 2005, and then it rallied into 2008, and then it eventually did have a 60% correction during the Great Financial Crisis. But what's key here is that after 2008 Great Financial Crisis, Apple's biggest correction it had since was 45%, and then all major corrections up until today were only around 30 to 40%, followed by rallies of 100% minimum. And I think that's the future of Bitcoin. So we're going to go slower now, much, much slower. Then our recovery was fast for Bitcoin off of the 2022 disaster for the crypto.com bubble, I'm calling it. But after that, it's going to be much slower, in my opinion. But again, the road leads towards, we already accomplished 126K Bitcoin. What's after that? Because if we were to experience even a 40, or let's entertain this. Let's entertain this. A 62% correction for Bitcoin, followed by a... No. I even have a hard time accepting that. That's even too ridiculous. So let's say 100 on the nose. And I'm like, you see, I'm doing this with the greatest performing asset of ever. I'm doing this. I'm still saying 100% doesn't even feel right. Okay? So anybody who's calling me a perma bear or whatever, don't get it twisted here. So, okay, let's entertain this as the possibility. What did Bitcoin go? 700? Or what did Apple go? 800% off of this? So imagine we only saw 300%. Half. That's your $200,000 Bitcoin. Does it need to drop all the way to these levels? Well, there's a much different use case and purpose of Apple stock than there is versus Bitcoin. Different, much different situation back in 2009 than it was compared till today with what we have going on in these financial markets. So I think there's something to this. I really, really do. And I'm even entertaining that we might be in this setup right now. We might already be in the process of moving into this setup. For the people that are ultra bearish, that's your setup. That's as good as it might get. And then after that, that might be If you didn't get in Bitcoin here and you only went into speculative altcoins, you would be very, very sorry that you'd be upset. And I don't even remember the last time I bought Bitcoin. So I'm saying this with like my outlook on all things that I've decoded, considered the fact that we're moving into a Shemitah year, the fact that we have metals doing what they're doing right now, my outlook towards the future leading up to Agenda 2030 is essentially just that. So there will be category winners in this whole thing. And like Amazon or Microsoft or Apple was, during that recovery timeline, we had a bunch of new shiny object technologies hitting the scene. Many of them came and went. And I personally feel that will be the case for AI this time around here in 2026 through 2028, where everyone is super hyped on AI, specifically agentic AI and all of these new tools to create content and apps, etc. But even though AI is quote unquote here to stay, the shiny objects have created a lot of competition in a very speculative but also disruptive technology. Ultimately, just a few category winners will show up on the other side on the finish line, at the finish line, and we might not even know those companies right now. Remember what happened with, what was it, DeepSeek? Where something happened with DeepSeek. Was it 2 years ago? And everybody just thought like, okay, ChatGPT is done. Like all of these, bro, they're bigger than ever now. And who talks about DeepSeek? So they gave you something. They gave you just some random thing. Now, I'm not calling DeepSeek random, but I mean, the whole reaction to that moment was like, okay, it's all over. There's just going to be these companies now. And it obviously is not the case. So I hope that kind of fear and like going through those moments and memories of like what it felt like when those events happened and how they pointed at them to say this is why the market's doing what it's doing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, gets you to see that they're controlling you through your emotions and through your belief or your ignorance, your lack of understanding about something or ability to forecast into the future. So, I mean, I don't know a single person talking about DeepSeek anymore. Maybe there's still quite a bit of utility there, but I think ultimately, like, we're just seeing some of the first chinks in the armor, and it will continue to grow and grow and grow until it becomes like everyday use. And who cares if it's Open AI or Microsoft? Who gives a shit? Okay? Unless you're planning to actively invest in it and you understand the technology and all of that enough to invest in it for that reason, that's the only time you should care. But I'm sure you're not feeling too much emotion right now about the refrigerator company that is the easiest one to buy in your local environment. It's just a refrigerator. That's what AI will become. It will just be like it'll be like the light bulbs that you buy for your house. You don't have much of an emotional connection on those. Right now, we have a lot of emotion around AI. That would also be a really cool thing to talk about, is like getting prepared for the AI world. That's a big piece to the new project that I'm launching soon. But I brought up the term disruptive a moment ago for a reason, because it's clear that AI obviously is. And the reason I isolated the time frame of 2026 until 2028 is because 2028 will be the next Shemitah year, starting on Rosh Hashanah, the Hebrew New Year, in September 2028. And all of you remember what happened the year before the last Shemitah, whether you were conscious of the sabbatical year, whether you were conscious of the Shemitah year or not, because we all lived through the 2020 C-19 scam and the global lockdowns, which kicked off the year prior to the Shemitah. That officially started on Rosh Hashanah in September 2021. So 7 years, it's a 7-year cycle. 7 years from 2020 is 2027. The next Shemitah is not a joke. This is the one that leads into Sustainable Development Agenda 2030. And it's happening as we complete our next solar cycle on New Year's Day in 2029. So that's massive. And I'm not saying this to push any fear. I'm saying this so that you can take this year, 2026, seriously. 2026 is not just any other year. This is the main reason why I just took the last 8 months to build what I'm about to launch. And what I'm about to launch will be, and I have so much confidence when I say it will be the solution to these technocrats, neocons, and transhumanists that are pouring all of their resources into to manifest our so called new normal. It even feels weird to say such a thing. Their plans don't fly with me. So, my response is to pour all of my resources into building what I'm building now. And I'm really looking forward to launching this soon because the life force of this new project is to solve the main pain points that most conscious people are facing today, which is having more in person connection, making real friends in real life, whether that be one on one or attending events or meetups, and even dating. And another main focus of mine for this new project was to create the ideal platform for you to acquire skills and knowledge in a way that actually makes you feel like you're making tangible progress. That's huge too. Feeling like you're making tangible progress is so important in the world that we're in today. And we've accomplished this by including built-in productivity tools to keep you motivated and staying accountable along the way. So this is so much more than an educational platform that we're building. And for those who specialize in a skill or a knowledge set, this platform is going to open up so many doors for you to network with people that are on your frequency. And that for me is so important because the future of what I do with Waters Above is to have all of us supporting each other's businesses. And I'm building a platform that can create those opportunities and make it all accessible and user friendly. And this goes hand in hand with the other main pain points most conscious people are facing today, besides more in person connection. And it's the feeling of freedoms being taken away and finance. So it's a big focus of mine right now to expand my network into including more specialists who are passionate about automating cash flow and teaching our people how to generate cash flow to get ahead of this unfortunate but very real disruption AI will bring to our economy. And this new project will be so much more than talking about crypto, but of course, we will also build a network of crypto educators, professional traders, analysts, and decoders so that we have all of our bases covered to script our future on our own terms. It's massive for me. So if any of you are interested, head over to watersabove.app and you can learn more about the collective, our new platform and mobile app, completely built from top to bottom by us, 100% in-house. It will truly be what I'm calling the conscious side of the internet. It's not ready just yet, but I'll have a more thorough update for the collective shared here very soon. In the meantime, to wrap up my thoughts on the next couple of years ahead, specifically where artificial intelligence fits into the conversation, because that's what kind of sparked all of this for me, and this big disruptive technology that's unraveling right in front of us. I wanted to create a response to all of this. And I'm sure I'm not alone when I say we'll continue to see a lot of competition in the AI space from here in 2026 until 2028, just like we saw in 2020 through 2022 for the crypto space with DeFi, crypto-backed loans, crypto rewards, credit cards, NFTs, etc. And during that phase between now and 2028, in my opinion, crypto won't be the focal point as much as it was back in 2020 through 2022, since AI has taken center stage and no one could deny that. But during this 2-year phase that we're currently in is where the next generation of category winners will be selected, as I said last week, for both AI and cryptocurrency, as they both go hand in hand in this slowly but surely to happen rollout of the Aquarian economy. And I believe what we're seeing right now with the Fed and all of the drama between Trump and Jerome Powell with interest rates, as well as the skyrocketing prices in silver and gold at a time where we're transitioning fully into a digital economy, that sets the tone for the next 2 years. And it's starting right here at the beginning of this year. Now, the main question many investors have now, maybe many of you have the same question, is should I keep investing in crypto if it looks so bad right now? And the follow-up question is, or should I invest in precious metals, since silver and gold are doing so good right now. And as I said earlier in this podcast, it's a little sketchy to see crypto in euphoria in late January last year when no one was talking about precious metals. And then here we have everyone is euphoric about precious metals in January this year, and they're the talk of the town and clearly in euphoria, swapping places with crypto. And that sentiment makes sense because price rules everything. So I get that. When humans see high prices, they're happy and they feel the FOMO. And the same goes for the opposite. When the prices are down, people get depressed and selling pressure increases. But the wisdom here is to be aware that once emotions are heightened in either direction and everyone starts agreeing on the same thing because of price, that's when everything goes the opposite direction. And we have, of course, to face the current reality of this being the first time in history where we have precious metals in a melt up while crypto is stagnant, and simultaneously, we have the first time ever where for I think it's like 9 going on 10 straight weeks where on average people are actually unsubscribing from crypto channels on YouTube. I mean, it doesn't hurt my feelings. I get it, even though I'm someone who's in this space. To me, this is a sign of like peak frustration. And again, I sympathize with those people because it's a first. This is literally the first time. And this will also be the first time that we've seen silver and gold move like this since technically 1979 moving into 1980, which was like, it's like a half a century ago. And we didn't have crypto or a tech bubble back then, making this a very unique financial climate. But with that said, one thing we have seen before was a major move up in precious metals throughout the existence of crypto. Crypto looking weak at that same exact time, which by the way, I'm really surprised people didn't get my last video because I think a lot of people just read the title and they didn't understand the point of my video regarding XRP and silver. They were making it seem like XRP should now immediately start following silver, and that wasn't the point. It was that the reason these charts are developing the way they are is a technical pattern. And I'm not going to even entertain this cup and handle shit. You know, it is, first of all, I mean, many people that even say these things don't even know charts. Second of all, very few people actually know the esoteric that's going on here. Hence why we have this exact $47 rejection twice over a, almost 40-year time horizon. And also simultaneously why it's taken 47 years for this price discovery breakout. Funny enough, silver's up 47% right now. Anyways, on the 3-day, apologies. That has nothing to do with things. It's just funny that we're talking about this and it's like showing itself right in front of our faces. But the main point that I'm getting to here is that they're inverse right now, and they've always been inverse. This is why there is ultimately a quote unquote rotation. And now I'm not saying that literally people sell gold and silver to then buy Bitcoin or XRP. That is not how it works. But what I am aware of is it's like maybe 10% or 20% of the silver in the end gold is not even owned by people. It's just paper, it's leverage. And I shouldn't even go there. You know, that's another whole thing to get into. So the point is that this is all happening in a digital realm anyways. Very rarely is, I mean, do you think they have the supply right now to be buying up all of this silver to make the market cap go up that high? It's the people that were, the banks that were having some issues. They're in the know. And this was 4 or 5 months ago, around Q4, like September, October. These same people said, okay, we're cutting this, and then we're going to pump this shit to oblivion so that we'll profit no matter what. And if they catch us in some fraud or legal thing, then we just take a slap on the wrist and we keep it moving. I still see people talking about like JP Morgan is going to fail and Bank of America is going to fail. Are you serious? These people are the beast system, bro. They're the ones long on silver right now and they ain't buying it physically. This is all just, it's fantasy. It's fantasy football. They picked those two players and they're doing well right now. They did the same thing with Bitcoin in the past, all while telling you Bitcoin's a scam. This is just their game, okay? Nothing's going under right now, all right? And it's not one of these big guys. Maybe in the Shemitah year, sure. Because if you look at Great Financial Crisis, 2001, you look at the bond market, 94, you look at 86, you look at all the, just find the sequence. It's very clear. It's a Shemitah year that they do this stuff. We're not in that right now. So this is very much that like wild card season, and it is making a lot more sense for me regarding the sentiment more than anything. So instead, we're seeing extreme greed in metals. We're seeing extreme fear in crypto from October of last year until today, which by the way, it's been over a 3-month time frame heading into month 4 very soon. So it's been a full quarter since this like noticeable divergence has occurred. And one thing that's definitely interesting for my analysis in our crypto mastermind community here is the fact that all 3 examples where we did get a rotation from gold into Bitcoin, and not literally a rotation, I already explained this, but when we get that rotational effect where we see a correction in precious metals as we're seeing Bitcoin and crypto explode in price, it's always around a August, September timeframe. So let me shut off the moons, and I've gone through this in the past. So we have August correction, we have August correction, we have August correction, and that's the fascinating setup because we almost had the same thing showing itself right here, where we were moving up into a new high into June, July. We have the summertime, and then we started to break out in August into September, but this thing just kept going. So that right there was the setup, and this went all in on this play, and we've seen what's been going down in crypto since. I believe it's because of this like crypto.com bubble effect that we're still dealing with since 2022, in my opinion. So also it has to do with the shortest lunar cycle ever. That's another big piece to it. And then also we have the halving, we have institutions getting involved, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's so many reasons for this. It's not just isolating what the gold's doing. So I've been actually talking about August 2026 this year. It's the main point that I wanted to get to. I've been talking about August 2026 this year for some time right now. And that wouldn't shock me if we actually do get like a little bit of a stall out soon. And then we see that stall out on gold, precious metals, lead into another rally up. Let me draw it because it might be easier to kind of like this. And then August, like that kind of thing. That would be a similar play to here, but with a rotational effect. And the problem here, to be honest, is Bitcoin does go up with the market, with gold during this time. It likes to go up during that time. But during this correction, initially Bitcoin will come down during the initial part of it. And then it decouples. It decouples on the deeper correction. I mean, maybe we don't have to go that deep. We could maybe go right back to here, just the last area that we stalled out a little bit before continuing higher. So we don't need to have like a crazy gold crash this year. I mean, it's in a melt up. So any corrections at this point, I mean, even if it just gave up this 8% candle here, people would start calling it crashing. So that is what it is. And for the people that maybe there is now a growing camp of people that do think we're moving into a blow off top. But I would think that they do it a little bit more elusive. A little bit more elusive, in my opinion. And then we could even go higher into 2027. So the topping out structure, but August is the play for us to still be up August, September, unless this is the end for gold. I wouldn't know right now because I would have to decode it and that would require some time. So This is a lot of the reason why I've been preparing for the two scenarios with eclipse season ahead, which we already talked about, and then the eclipse season in August. So if we were to get a little bit of that pressure in crypto in the immediate short term, that would be better to rip the band-aid off, especially while we're having gold and precious metals so high, because there's always been that rotational effect as crypto has existed side by side with precious metals. But now that we're here, I'm going to flip over to these charts and talk about where silver's at, which it's like literally about to hit my target of 106 as we record this. And there was another thing that I did here where I just pulled the, let me turn off the moons. Effectively a target like that, and then just placed it over here. So you got another way of looking at this from the larger pattern and the measure move. It's not the most sophisticated because these are very long time horizons, but it gives you something to work with here. And then we've blasted through all of these major levels already. I haven't deleted them since, but I will keep that 48 because for obvious reasons. That was your breakout level. But we have nothing in between that. It's been week after week after week after a very clean breakout, back test, and release. So this whole thing right now is toast, like way too overbought, way too overbought. And of course, it's never the best to just solely rely on like one indicator, but this thing's moving like a crypto right now, and it hasn't since back here. And the last time it did this or it did that, we didn't even get that high on this rally on the RSI. We're looking at the monthly RSI, by the way. So we're approaching territory that is it's sizzling, you know, like it's sizzling. And I do think people should be careful right now. If you're not de-risking any of this because you do believe for certain this is going to go to $400 or whatever, or it's going to immediately hit this 1618 target at 241, which by the way, if you want to know more about my opinion on silver and where it's headed, I did a full-blown decode on that a couple weeks ago. It's called Silver Decoded, so watch that. During that, I brought up this 107 target, and I believe I probably put this original line over here, and I adjusted these fibs, and I talked all about the higher targets. So watch that. It's a really, really powerful decode. And I wasn't even planning on doing it. It just kind of came up and I had some fresh ideas, and here we are. So the next major level beyond where we are right now is somewhere into this $200 territory, and that would be another 100% from here. I think we would have to have some real deal like disorder in the global financial system for that to occur, unless we were to stall out right now and build some volume in this area, because we have nothing between 48 and where we are right now. That is not good. That is why you have blow off tops, because look at this last blow off top. Where did you come back to? The last trading range. And yes, had a nice, cool little bull trap, but then you came right back to the trading range. And then what really happened eventually was you dug deep back into the support of the trading range. Do you really want to hold through all of that if it cannot make it all the way up to, by the way, a level that I'm not sure if how many people have been talking about, but what are the ramifications of a $240 silver? And then again, if for the people that are thinking that's very good, like that's awesome, where do you spend it? Where do you spend that silver? Do you go to a grocery store with your silver coin and you're like, the dollar's collapsed here, will you take this? Because I don't think that is the case either. I think that's a very far-reaching conspiracy that many people want to entertain, primarily because they hold a lot of silver. So it's in their best interest to feel that way. And I don't blame you. I'm a human too. I've created a lot of like thesis around what makes me feel the most comfortable. But if you're winning in this silver play right now and you're seeing this parabola, I would definitely take that into consideration. Now, let's move over to gold. Gold has broken the 4.7 target and my 4.9 target, and now we are just What is this monthly RSI? 95, man. This is not this. Sorry. I know it's a little, I'm just looking at the chart now. Sorry. That's high. It's very, I've said all throughout last year, I'm not selling my gold. I still don't want to. So I totally get the silver guys right now that are like, I don't want to sell. But the thing is like, I'm not banking my whole life on gold. I'm just not. And it's a way better chart. Let's just be real here. I mean, the last time gold broke out into price discovery, it back tested a prior level, built a lot of support on top of it, and then it continued to keep moving. This actually is so much like the Bitcoin chart in a lot of ways, where Bitcoin was back testing prior. Let me show you what the hell I'm talking about. Let me not use this chart. Let me go here. Take that off, and you'll see what I mean. But that would be like the cliche, right? Like, oh, silver is XRP and Bitcoin's gold or whatever. That's not what I want to do here. But you see this? We called it a double top, bear market. Then we came back up here and we had all of this time back testing the prior peak, and then we kept it moving. So that's this play right here. And during that, there was this pretty notable correction. Perhaps that's what we're in now. No point of comparing the two. They're not exactly the same, but the charts are clearly similar with regards to the silver gold setup and the Bitcoin gold setup. For example, in 2021, Bitcoin continued into price discovery. XRP did not. So in 2011, silver did not break into price discovery. Gold did. So there's many ways to draw these comparisons, and you know what? Both people win because this is what it leads to. And I just don't see how this can continue going and going and going, as gravity has always, or it's not gravity, it's actually relative density is the truth. But let's just play the game of semantics here and say, as gravity always works, what comes up must come down. So when something is just rising and rising and rising, it's a sign that, well, you guys know. So this isn't the most technical outlook right now. I'm sorry for that, for those people that really want a technical outlook. But the thing remains the same. Trend is your friend until the end. And we're already surpassing area of overbought on the RSI that, I mean, is uncomparable to the past. And retail is pretty much buying this stuff for the first time already in some of these heightened levels. So we've broken high above all of our daily moving averages. All of the daily moving averages are in a bullish posture. And the 55 moving average now on the daily is already back at where the October peak was. So that's very nice. If this were to Christmas tree back to lower targets, that 55 would be a solid place for it to stall out for a bounce. And actually, this setup right here is very similar to what I was talking about with us coming back maybe into like May and then going up into August. So maybe that is the play. We roll over soon here in Q4. We come back down into like May, and then we have that move back up into August, perhaps a double top. And then we come down deeper into Q4, maybe back to like 4,200, not too much more, maybe 4,000. And then from there, we get bought back up and then we continue higher into 2027. That'd be a great play. And that would still bode very well for everyone who bought gold or bought silver at the discounted prices they were trading in for a long time. So let's move on to Bitcoin. Just quickly, because we talked a lot about the timing of Bitcoin, but we have a couple things happening here. One is the wolf cross on the daily. That does not look good to see, but also when these things happen on the weekends, it's not to be trusted either. So that's been another big theme for crypto, is the fact that we have these weekends and we have all this leverage and we have all these retail investors involved. It actually takes effort to go to a store and buy gold and silver. Here, you can just open up your, well, I mean, you could do the same thing buying gold and silver very quickly on your phone, but point being that it's just so simple to get involved in this crypto market and play with leverage. You don't need to be that intelligent to go ahead and sign up to a leverage exchange that gives you a 100x leverage, and you could try to turn pennies into nickels or whatever. So right now we're pretty much at a very critical support, and a lot of what's come my way is everyone is talking about the bear flag. So this flag pole, and we're breaking through the support of the flag effectively, if that's the way you want to play this. So issue here is what is it, like 60% of the time these things break in the direction that they're supposed to. And another thing is, what I've noticed in crypto is you can break, but then you get a what's called a kickback. And that kickback could get fucked up, because then you would anticipate this to run into support again, and then the true bear flag plays out, but you actually hyperextend above it. And then you could kick back the other way. And then this pattern can be like a broadening sort of megaphone pattern, and then everyone's wrong. That's the point that I'm getting to here with these patterns. And especially when YouTubers start to talk about it a lot, because the tactics now on YouTube are just copy the thumbnail, copy the topic, copy the news, copy the pattern that you're going to show them, and then sign up to this leverage exchange in the description, and then everyone gets fucked. So that's essentially the playbook now of crypto on YouTube, Twitter, etc. It is what it is. Looking at the weekly, I don't love this structure. This is definitely reminiscent of the way that this came to a conclusion over here in many ways. But we did have one more final bullish run up into around March. Here you can see this was the end of Jan. We were pretty down. There was a higher high in March. That aligns with a lot of things that I've talked about, but it's more like February, and it's more like July. Into the eclipse season. So if this were to start breaking structure sooner, there is obviously targets around 60K that would make sense to return to, and that might be as good as it gets. And I've told you my reasons why. We already entertained these this Apple chart. I think it's big. I have a hard time looking at like a 40K Bitcoin again. I just don't see how it wouldn't have happened along the way here. That's my biggest thing. I don't see how it hasn't happened along the way. This was the institutional involvement. It was right there. And since we've actually done some of the most bullish things that we've seen in any crypto chart, and I don't say that to like promote Bitcoin, it's just facts. We have this double top, and then we've back tested the top of it and then continued. Then we back tested the top of this prior range and then continued. And now we're back there at the same level where the tariff stuff started. So that's another thing to consider as well. Let's move on though. We have ETH also continuing this pattern. This week right here of October, whatever, we also had a major red week after we were looking good the week prior. That's effectively what just happened. We had a good looking week the week prior, and then rejection, and we're coming back down. The one thing though is this is starting to look very sketchy if you're just somebody who pays attention solely to trend lines. So I get it. Trend lines are very powerful because they're the easiest thing that you could possibly do in regards to technical analysis, but it's not technical analysis. Although, because everyone's doing it, everyone's using it, and the institutions aren't really super involved in a lot of this. I mean, not as nearly as much as Bitcoin. They do tend to have they hold a little more weight. Although you'd always want to be looking at higher time frames too. So we do have this inverse head and shoulders play clear as day, but we're back now in a similar position as Bitcoin where we're holding onto a support. So in the event this breaks, naturally your next target is 2,500. We've seen what ETH did from December Q4 to the tariff crash. The speed at which that happened and how oversold it got during that process was pretty unbelievable. And the fact that we haven't been free falling like that, given how much negative news, negative sentiment, how many people are leaving the market, it's a sign that we're pretty close. And I'm sticking to that as my base case, also with regards to the eclipse season, which has been obviously something I've talked about a lot. Now, as for XRP, I already showed you the theme here, which is 9 to 10 days after the new moon. And let me just quickly, for those who might have forgotten, we have the new moon. We have 9 days, is tomorrow technically into Wednesday, which is the day of the FOMC meeting. And then from there, you usually get pivots. So that wouldn't be weird to me to close off the month maybe around this $2 zone, because that's every time we get down to this like sub $2, we've been gravitating back to it. And there's a lot of point to escrow unlock and that being tied to literally every single dump. So that's making me again very like cautious of my long-term thesis on XRP, because of how much I'm aware that Ripple is involved. Like, yeah, they're just selling Ripple. They're selling XRP. It is what it is. And we can't be tied to that emotional, like we can't disregard that. It's like Stockholm syndrome or something. So I've made quite a bit of money with XRP, but my long-term thesis is continuing to like refine over time, as it should. And I think if we were to get any substantial price moves above current highs, I would definitely be taking de-risking and selling a lot more seriously than I might have in the past. Especially with the world that we're moving into. So I think there's a lot of positives for XRP, but as for the way that Ripple themselves are treating the token, it's just escrow unlock, dump. They're selling on their so-called community, and then dilution of supply. These are not good things, and that needs to be addressed. So one thing though, from a technical standpoint, is we're kind of there. We're hanging in on those support levels. And another thing has happened with this major trend line. One second. So this trend line right here is nonsense. It actually doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. We had a couple of major touch points before a breakout. And then when we broke out, the only reason I'm even looking at this trend line anymore is because the liquidation ritual on October 10th swiped down perfectly to it. And then we got bought back. And then we kind of like trickled down to it again, since we had a momentary break above, but then again down. So I do think there's something to these types of trend lines that I've been using. Yeah, this is very like, this is a little sketchy. So we're back at like the extremes. And that in one way is a good thing. We're back at extremes where this was during like the tariff crash. Do we get bought up from here over the next 48 hours and then have a pivot back up and kind of call this our base? That would be fantastic. That would be fantastic. And that's what I'm leaning more on, just because of how long we've been bearish. We've been effectively bearish now heavily for 4 straight months without any like real notable relief rally. Like, I wouldn't call this a relief rally, but I did not like the speed at which XRP was pumping here. That's not good. Let's move on. We have Raven Coin. I have maybe covered this project in the past. I'm not sure, but let's look at the 3-day. Okay, wow, wowee. All right, so we have a problem here on this. We're seeing this a lot lately. So again, it's kind of building my crypto.com bubble thesis and making it stronger and stronger and stronger. And it's when we see charts like this. And I'm even invested in a couple charts that look like this. So no hard feelings. Again, this is the Red Pill podcast. We have to be honest here. We have broken through a major support that goes back since like the genesis of this project. And we can see that we're at all-time lows. The liquidation ritual event, we're filling that wick, and we've even gone a little lower recently than we did leading into the end of the year. That right there is, I'm curious if we were to just fill these wicks for all of these altcoins. second. Oof, no. Because some of them are disaster. Some of them are fucked. Some of them don't have it though. Like it's just the charts. Some of these would be disaster. It's like the chart that they exist on is low liquidity, too much leverage, etc. So it's hard to like confirm that this is in fact the official like average across the board. But anyways, with that being said, what we're seeing right now, I would believe, is a spring, unless this is going to zero. So these are like, that's what's really tough about this right now, is you have your general range, which has been holding, right? Here would be your automatic rally, and here would be your spring, and then you would come back up from here and have a test. And then after your test, you would have what's called an SOS. In my opinion, any chart that looks like this, you're going to learn a lot with this right here. Any chart that looks like this, the next major alt run will do what XRP did in the past. Let me quickly show you so you can go, you could have a visual to come along with it. What XRP did here, let me go to like a weekly, might be a little easier for you to understand. XRP just continued and continued and continued all the way through the C19 crash. That might be what we're dealing with right now, coming to the conclusion of this. And then right here, you have your spring, you have your test, you have your backup phase. It looks very ugly. It looks very ugly. And then a buying climax in this particular cycle. But overall, it's just actually an SOS in a macro. Those of you that have been here for a long time, you know that's how I taught this whole thing. That's why my channel started here effectively, and I talked publicly about selling XRP around the $150 to $186 target. And I got crucified back then for that. I understand why, because there was that emotion of like, we're just going to keep going and going and going. My whole thing was I was paying a lot of attention to Wyckoff method, and I wasn't seeing that in the cards at that time. And another thing is, if it were to happen on my like my pie chart of percentages, it was maybe a 20% chance. So my thing was like, why at this stage of my life and where I'm at with my investments sit on an 80% probability the thing is likely not to go above $3 here in this particular cycle. And then that ended up working in my favor. But the whole thing that I wanted to point out here is the fact that this, to the absolute worst of the worst, might be a very similar setup. I mean, I don't know about the days. It's obviously maybe not the same. And sorry, 1 second. Yeah, it's definitely not the same. 1780. It's faster. But I mean, still not looking the greatest overall at this similar time frame. And there was a major pivot, and the days are not as important here. You'd have to like individually decode stuff, but I'm just kind of entertaining the structure. And another thing I'm kind of saying here is that I am never expecting this thing to go into price discovery ever again. This was your .com bubble, like Euphoria, the year 2000. We're moving into like, will this continue price discovery to the downside to zero, which it feels like it is? Or is this just the absolute worst of it before a spring? And then you have that, and then you have SOS. Like here, you see, you come up, there's your spring, chop, and then a major AR. I actually have it all written out. Cool. So right now we're in the macro SOS. That is why I'm entertaining price discovery for XRP, but that is not what I'm entertaining for Ravencoin. So at best, look at where your major fib is. It's at like the top of the 786. Maybe you get to the 888 fib, and that would be the opportunity here. But we would pull the whole fib in order to understand that. So it's like going back to the similar prices that we were falling through. And I would put this line here to entertain that. Major touch points might not get better than that. And it doesn't last long, by the way. The move up through here, that was a single month, and then we were back down. But that's also very promising because if this thing were to even make it back up to the lows, that's almost 1,000%. Again, not completely weird because if we look at where XRP was at the lows up to the exact top, what did XRP do? That's right. Over 1,000, 1,500% if you bought the exact lows. So again, if we were to buy those lows, it would be an almost mimic if we were to come back up to similar targets. So I would not buy this project at this time because we aren't building any structure. We are just continuing down. And I'm taking a little bit extra time here because I feel like a lot of these charts are going to continue to pop up throughout the year whenever we're doing these red pills. And it's going to be insanely valuable for you to understand the macro setup here. First of all, you get to like keep the idea of price discovery out of your mind so that you're not like ultra moon boy and having too crazy expectations. But then another thing is, this coming back up for the test might make this the best buying opportunities of all time. With that being said, you're able to still fill this wick. You're able to still continue deeper than the wick. This project, what does it really mean? Okay. The reason I can question that is because why is it at all-time lows when Bitcoin and many other of the top projects are technically at all-time highs, like when you zoom out of their all-time history? So this is not being used by anybody or anything. It has probably a very niche, small community, and you have to question those things with your speculative investments. So, another thing, somebody asked me recently, why do I call these venture capital investments? They're not venture capital. Well, I thought people would put the pieces together. It's just like when you are a new tech company, you're accepting venture capital. And in many cases, you are part of the venture capital as investors in it. And sometimes you're part of the whole grand scheme. I think, unfortunately, that might be what occurred with one of the larger communities out there, the Hex community. No shade thrown at them. I have many people in the Hex community that follow my work. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to you or your investment thesis, but what I'm trying to say is like you were part of the experiment in many, many ways. You're a huge promoter of it if you make YouTube content and X content, right? That spreads awareness, spreads attention. And I mean, the guy himself utilized like, what is it? Like an attention marketing, like a shock marketing, right? No different than Andrew Tate. And that's done purposefully to get more people to buy the thing. And then when they buy it, it doesn't really matter about having some big shots in Silicon Valley to fund you. It is venture capital. It's just not in the traditional sense. They're not publicly traded company. We know this. So I thought people just put those two things together. Like you're making a bet, just like the person who's funding one of these tech companies, fintech companies, they're making a bet. They're giving up dollars to somebody who makes the promise that they're going to provide the world with a technology or service. At the end of the day, it's usually not real. It's just a bunch of make-believe promises, and then it turns out to be, in some cases, a money laundering situation or worse. Now, we're moving on to Tron. Now, this is a good-looking chart. Yeah, this is undeniable. So when we look back at Ravencoin, we see a stark difference, don't we? I think I might have removed it. But yeah, we see quite a difference. I think we have a project coming up that's similar to Ravencoin. Boom. Actually, the big difference with Sand, though, is it had a little bit of prior structure built at lower prices. But let's stick with Tron for now. This is clearly a much, much different situation. I don't know anything about Tron's community. I know very little about Justin Sun, the guy that's behind it. One second, I take a little sip of water. But yeah, man, this chart is really fascinating. I mean, it's not the craziest ROI of all time. Like, I mean, you're about up as much as you would be on silver right now, right? Let me quickly check in. Silver gonna hit this 107 while we're here. I mean, on average, yeah, like if you got in at like the $14 level on silver, massive, 650%. Congrats. So this is the C19 crash. That would be like if we timed it similarly, like this is 2018, by the way, November. If we were to go November 2018, which is right here, Tron is up 2,500%. Fuck. Yeah. So what I love about this is its structure. It's just holding and holding and holding. I mean, perhaps there's a massive parallel channel here that we can entertain. Let me quickly get that in for you. It's probably good enough. I don't have to be perfect here. It's an altcoin at the end of the day, but wow. This has been really fascinating, and I'm just adjusting whenever I adjust parallel channels, by the way, I always look for the heart line. Most people, they naturally, their eyes gravitate towards extremes, but I rather focus on support and heart line, just so you know. This thing can go to 50 cents this year. I need to look into Tron more. I don't want to buy it because the ROI for me isn't really, but like, yeah, this move up to the 1618 is very possible. Very, very possible. And like this chart looks better than Monero's chart. And Zcash. And a lot of people are giving praise to Zcash, but Zcash just broke out back to its 2017 level in a straight line, and it had to lose like 99% of its value to pull that off. We did see effectively Tron mimic what XRP did with the lowest lows in the bear market of 2020 happening on the C19 crash. It then copied XRP, where it went up to a slightly lower all-time high, but then corrected, held structure, and then has just been like a moseying on up. Now, this would be like if XRP was trading at $3 right now. Big difference though, I guess technically, is XRP did break into price, not really like real deal price discovery, but it did break higher than its blow off top peak for much more time. So there's that. Hey, I'm not trying to make this about one or the other, as one is better than the other, but this is a fucking great chart. If you would have invested in this over most altcoins in 2022 bear market, you would not be mad if you just held this. You know, you'd be up 400, 500%. So this looks really good. Like, I mean, I think this is solid, man. Holding this support for this long and not having these insane price spikes anymore. You know what wouldn't shock me? If the guy, Justin Sun, is just putting all of his wealth into this shit. Is that legal? Like, I mean, I guess it is, right? I mean, he could do it through other people anyways because he's Chinese, so he could figure a way around this and it won't even matter in their legal system. Not throwing shots, by the way. It's just he's a billionaire. He's not an idiot. He has people on his team. And that would be the ultimate way to keep your shit up. Just keep putting all the wealth you amass back into it. And I'm assuming he probably doesn't do that, though. I don't think. He probably buys mostly Bitcoin. I think I saw an interview clip of him talking about Bitcoin. He didn't even talk about Tron. He didn't even talk about his own. He just straight up just talked about Bitcoin the whole time. He was like, if I could tell my younger self what to do, I would just buy only Bitcoin. And that was crazy to hear. I think he paid like some absurd amount of money to have a lunch with Warren Buffett. And the pitch that he gave Warren Buffett was buy Bitcoin. Like, imagine telling Warren Buffett, he's like 200 years old. Imagine telling him to buy Bitcoin. It's hilarious. But yeah, so all jokes aside, I like this chart, man. From a technical perspective, if it does break down though, you're looking at about 14 cents, but that's not like a cataclysm. That's like a pretty typical, like that's a 50% correction from here, which is something XRP has already technically done, right? Like XRP has already had a 50% correction from all-time highs, which by the way is good. I mean, if you count the fucking scam wick, it's a full bear market, but that'd be great if that was technically counted. I wouldn't though. Too much leverage. Anyways, like this chart. I like this chart. Let's move on to Sand. It's a project I do have a venture capital investment in, a little bit of play money, but it is now, this is what I was trying to teach. This is what I was teaching you with Raven. This is the fucking spring. Guys, this would be the best. I don't want to get excited. But this would be the best outcome. This would be the best outcome if we had a false alt season that was like super unfulfilling, to then have a major liquidity, like a leverage reset, followed by a spring out of it, like we had with C19. And Sand is showing us the signs, bro. This is what I was just showing you on Ravencoin. Bro, it could be something like this. And then it goes back here. Highest. Like, I don't think this shit makes it to no way. Not into price discovery. No one cares anymore, but at least 2 be gnarly. Yeah. Especially in the future we're moving into. Remember, guys, when long time ago I said expect less returns moving forward compared to the 2021 cycle, and everyone was mad at me whenever I made what I'm investing in specials and I talked about the golden pocket so much. They're like, why? Why not price discovery for everything like we saw in 2021? And I never said that would be your main expectation. That's not good. And plenty of people were mad at that. They're like, I want price discovery. And I said, no. XRP, yes. ETH, yes. Binance Coin, yes. We haven't seen it on ETH yet. We haven't seen it truly on XRP yet. But all of this other stuff, all of this very speculative stuff, at best, the golden pocket, at best, your 702. And if you really, really get lucky, the 888. If you get lucky, the 888. If you get lucky. But how the fuck could you be mad at that? It's a 3,000% from here, right? So again, I know it's probably a lot of people are in these things. They're down 60%, 70%, but that's why you're in venture. That's why I personally call them venture capital, because they're things that I'm just like throwing into the fire. I know they can go to zero, but you must you create a portfolio that's around 20% venture capital max. If 20% went to zero and the other 80% continue to appreciate over time, then you're doing much better than anybody who's ever been a professional trader on Wall Street. Okay? So that's the game we play here in crypto. And it's not even like the regular markets don't go through these things. Look at the dot-com bubble. Look at a lot of the things that have happened over the last 20 years. Companies just bust. There could be a scandal with the CEO. They just go bust. Some of the most promising companies like WeWork, look into them. So many companies, man. So of course it could happen here in crypto. Things actually go to zero. We've seen it happen in 2022. So I'm continuing to call it the dot-com bubble of crypto, the crypto.com bubble. But this right here is very promising. And you see this layer of volume all built around 34 cents. That would already be nice because you're talking about a 100% move just to finish off the spring and get back to the test. So I might even buy some sand. I might. Even though I'm at a loss on this, I might buy a little bit just because of that. Coming back up to the spring, holding that level, chop around, and then get back to like the 0.5 fib, maybe the 618, maybe. But I would have to, you do this. And you see now where this is adjusted, that 236 is everything. So around that 0.5 fib, you have all of your major rejection points that you've had since the crypto.com bubble. $1 sand would be huge on something that no one gives a shit about. Like, this is not what it used to be. Back here, that was your crypto.com bubble pop. And then we're seeing the truth of that statement come to life here. And I am in a loss on this project. So this is definitely something that I would definitely be de-risking in the future. So let's look at Ethereum Classic. Ooh, okay, yeah, all right. I think someone got into a weird argument with me the last time I talked about ETH Classic. They were saying how ETH Classic is outperforming ETH or something. I don't remember. It was very interesting. Why people get mad at these statements, I don't know. As if they themselves program the project and work for the team. You know, it's funny, like the people that work for... I've had 3 or 4 people that work for companies that have been members of our mastermind community. Like someone on the team of XDC Network used to be a member. I mean, maybe they still are, I'm not sure, but they were in our mastermind community. And I shared a red pill And I did say my own thoughts on it at the time, maybe not everything 1,000,000% positive, but they wrote me an email later on and being like, thank you so much for your feedback. Like the people that actually work on these projects, they take that sort of take on the markets from people at least that they resonate with and respect, and they take it like an opportunity. I've seen people get more emotional who have no connections to these things besides just they have maybe a couple $100 in them. They have no ties to the company. It's very weird. Here we're moving into a spring, but the problem is it could go something like this again, where you can see we have like a double. We have a major wipeout into 2019. We have a massive rise in price, which by the way, this was an eclipse season situation. And then we come right back down. And then there's some structure. This is your test, by the way. And then this is your next rally, which I think you have to consider this $45 level on ETH Classic is similar to what we just discussed with Sand. At best, if you get above that, it would be a sign to get out. So I don't know if I would personally ever give this attention over Ethereum, but to each their own. That's on you. I am likely going to adjust my investment thesis moving forward into the future to align more with like where I believe or where I forecast things going, because this crypto.com bubble thing is very serious to me now. It'll be a big part of my analysis, and I think it will shape a very realistic approach at de-risking, taking profits, and ultimately what I will consider quote unquote venture capital in the future. As always, you must refine over time. If you were to move into a town with 300 people, and for whatever reason, some big money manager came in and started investing and building properties. And the next thing you know, they have a hotel chain and 4 new apartment complexes that could house 1,000 people each. And then you go from a 300-person town to now a 30,000 people city. Are you not going to adapt? Are you not going to adjust? Are you not going to maybe consider, well, I got to move out if you don't feel comfortable there anymore? Well, guys, that's how your investments and your portfolio and your investment thesis must go. Over the past 5 years, we've had a lot of changes, a lot of new people coming into the space, a lot of people leaving the space. The new people that have come in have a lot more money than the people that used to be a part of the conversation. That's just facts, because they have infinite capital. And they also have leverage, and they have all these instruments to manipulate the market, which you've obviously, if you know anything about silver, that was the case for silver. And it's finally come to its moment where magically 47 years later that breaks out. So I think this is a really good place to stop. We have a similar structure on Ravencoin here and Sand and a couple of the other projects, and we've spent a lot of time today talking about mindset and just the theory behind what's going on in these markets. It's very typical, as I said, that Monday, especially during FOMC week, we get a lot of shakeouts, a lot of weird energy. I do think the next 48 hours are going to be very important, but ultimately the whole week will be very telling of what's the next move that crypto makes leading into eclipse season. And generally, we have the bottoming structure between now and March. Generally, that's the way things work. So that's very good news considering that we're about to move into February. So we're close, guys. We're very, very close. This is where a lot of people give up. This is where a lot of people start FOMOing into stuff that's already quite high. And I think it's an important time to like just calm down, relax, get very clear on what you want out of this whole thing called investing, and think about how you're going to treat 2026. Like I said, like I'm pouring all of my resources into the new project that I'm creating, the collective. It's going to be launching very soon. I think it's going to be a gateway to so many opportunities for people, from making in-person connections, finding jobs, getting hired doing certain skills or tasks, and also networking for other business owners to potentially hire people, dating possibilities, I mean, event creation, meetups, you name it. Literally everything under one umbrella, potentially even coaching opportunities for people out there that are professionals at what they do. They have a product service that they offer, and it could be a platform to allow them to host what it is that they're sharing. So they're opening up to this ecosystem of people, and it will be on an absolutely gorgeous platform. We built everything, designed everything. It looks incredible. So I'm really stoked to share more information about that, but I will wait until I have something to really show you that's working, something live, not just our website over here. But in the meantime, you could go ahead and check out watersabove.app. Gives you a very good idea of a little sneak peek of what we're doing. But in the meantime, I appreciate and I'm grateful for every single one of you. Wishing you all an amazing rest of your week in the Matrix. Much love.